Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Carpo's World. Let's get the camera focused. My subscribers taught me that trick. Like, put your hand up next to your face. It'll focus. Not that I really care if my face is focused. I guess the whole point in doing videos where I face the camera is because I feel like I'm being as honest as I possibly can. And by facing the camera, I feel like I'm facing the people. And I'm learning a lot from myself and from others by doing these videos, and I just wanted to kind of discuss that. I was sick yesterday. You know, some people get sick, get really sick. Some people never get sick. I'm one of those people that get sick a couple times a year, maybe once, maybe twice, but in between getting sick, I get these little moments. It's almost like a little 24-hour flu kind of thing, but it's not a flu. Like, I wake up in the morning and just feel great, and then feel a little off, then get a headache around noon, and then kind of, the headache might build. I don't know. Sometimes I get the headache at night or in the morning. It just depends, for various reasons. And it finally ends with a purging and just feeling, kind of delirious and sick. So everybody's been sick around here, and I caught a different kind of the bug. But anyway, as I was laying there in bed, and I was kind of in that delirium state, I was using it to my advantage, and I was thinking, okay, yeah, I feel sick now, but tomorrow I'm going to feel great, which is now. Here I am. I feel great. 7 a.m. As usual. I slept all night, or I slept all day yesterday, or at least half the day, then woke up around 7 or 8, and then I watched a couple documentaries, and I had, gotten to the point where I was totally grounded, where I wasn't sick, but I was very focused. Now, sometimes when I get sick, I get into these hyper-focused modes where I'm really into something, but it's something that has to be done. It's nothing I can do. I can't move. It's almost like being incapacitated because you're sick, but your brain is completely overcompensating for that by really observing what you're watching. And I can't focus very well watching television shows or whatnot. I try. But I watched a documentary last night about H.R. Geiger, which is the, let's just call him the dark artist of our time. Well, he's been around for a long time, but you probably heard the name through sources like the Necronomicon or he did the work for Alien, the movie. He's the one who designed the aliens for Alien, so you can put it that way. That pretty much sums it all up. All of his work is very, very dark and mysterious, and they did a documentary about him, and I watched that last night, and it really got me thinking a lot about this other side of humanity. This, I guess, being sick put me in that mode where I realized, okay, some people are always super hyper focused on things. Others are always sick. Some people are sick all the time. But it's not about being sick, like physically sick. I'm saying that those two contrasts in my day showed me that there's extreme contrast among people who otherwise would be this very similar and have shared similar ideas. But their circumstance, such as being sick or hurt, it gives them a view of the world that allows things to flow through them differently. They have different perceptions, different ideals. And I think that's awesome. I think this is what the world's made of. And then there are times when I'll come out here and I'll make a video and say, what the world's all about is just difference. And that, I'll say that that I'm positive that the world can change into a greater place, that the people are good, and that inherently there's much good around us. And then I realized that some people see people like H.R. Geiger's work, very, very dark and brooding, whatever, he wouldn't hold back for anything, exploding fetuses, you name it. It doesn't matter, because nothing is considered sacred in the realm of the reality of the mind of a person who refuses to let society tell him what's normal and what's not. Because I guess my point here is that from the outside, from, say, the Catholic Church looking at his work, be like, oh my God, that is horrible and disgusting. But from his point of view, he's a philanthropist. He helps people. He's not about money or self-indulgence. He has a very packed house full of books, and he does his art, and that's what he does. He's an artist, and a true artist that spends every last penny of his money that he makes doing new art projects. Whereas the people who define art as these galleries in New York where people go and sip wine and look at each other's art, I've never understood that. I don't understand that as art. The passion, even if it's there, is overshadowed by the desire for people to be recognized. In other words, Look at me, look at me. There's a name on my painting. It's worth more money. It's like a while back there was a painting that was thought to be made by a famous painter. It was worth millions of dollars up for auction. Then somebody found out it was a forgery and dropped down to worthless. Completely worthless. Here's a painting. The exact same painting. Never changed a bit. Lost all its value because it was a fake. Nobody could tell the difference. That to me shows society's hang up or wrap up with what we think is valuable. But I guess the real reason I wanted to was started making this video is I was talking about the sick and the contrast of being sick and realizing that there's many contrasts in people, and while I don't see that this side of him as a dark side of humanity, but rather a side that we all have. The darkness is within us. If you deny your darkness, then you're denying part of yourself. Now there's an extent where people take it too far, and they think that embracing their darkness means embracing indulgence. And this is where things get out of control. This is where people get to the point where they try doing things like sacrifices or ritual abuse. And these things do happen. And yeah, there are little satanic cults who are so obsessed with this power they think that they have to obtain through the sacrifice of other things. Now, I won't even get into this aspect of it because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the occult worship of Lucifer or any of this. I'm talking about embracing the darkness for what it is. And what I thought about this when I was looking at one of his pictures, it was one of his really detailed pictures, and I thought, with the alien-like face and just all this craziness, and I looked at my wife and I said, you know, the only thing that makes that picture creepy is our preconceived notions about what creepiness is, as well as our learned behaviors in life about what we think should be scary and what we've been told is scary. But if you were to see this as a fresh intelligence that's never come across any type of other opinions about negativity or never seen any other pictures like this, never, you know, you might look at the beautiful, elegant curves of an alien head and think, wow, that's gorgeous, you know? Or you might think, oh, that's nothing. I don't even know what that is. I can't even, it's like trying to see an alphabet and structure the words and understand what it means if you've never been there. If you're seeing a picture of a three-dimensional reality you don't understand, you can't see it as good or bad, it just is. But there is this underlying instinct that we have where we can look at something and just know it seems dark. I think that there are those things, but I don't think they're as strong as we think they are. For example, going into a cemetery or holding a skull or any of these things, you know, these are things that people consider dark, scary. They're not at all. They're just dark and scary because we die. And when we die, we get buried in these graveyards and we become these skulls. And this is why the dark and brooding world of, you know, the occult gets to the point where they begin to almost worship death. And when I look at extreme religious fanaticists who are, say, you know, so obsessed with God that they ignore their fellow man or their lives, or that they think that all it's about is following a book and then they miss the point of how to act, I think what a waste. You have such good dedication to your causes, but you're not living them. But on the other hand, some people take the self-indulgence too far and get into these satanic groups or whatnot, where they think it's just all about, you know, pleasing the self. People like, I mean, I'm not going to get into like names and talk about, you know, Madame Blavatsky and even the old famous. There are quite a few famous, you know, type people like this. One of them is Aleister Crowley, and you know, I find Aleister Crowley to be funny, humorous to me, because he's a joke to me. And I know that sounds silly. That's like, how could, you know, like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in his time, he was trying to yearn for these understandings and this deeper knowledge, just like a lot of people were, but it was in the day before the internet, the day before people could communicate, and it was easier for people to get wrapped up in their little groups. I guess I shouldn't even use the internet as an example because people still get wrapped up in their groups, but the silliness of guys like Aleister Crowley. Like, I have a record from Aleister Crowley. It's called The Voice of the Great Beast. I bought it on a limited edition white vinyl of 100 copies. And people might ask, why would you buy a fucking Aleister Crowley chant LP? You know, I mean, it sounds so evil. But I bought it because I'm in touch with my dark side. Have I listened to it yet? No, I haven't. Because there's still something inside me that says, okay, his intentions behind this, I have to really understand before I'm going to start playing this. I have played parts of it to see what it's about. But more, I bought it for the novelty, for the collection. And on the cover, it's got him sitting here in this famous pose like this, his eyes semi-wide, and a picture of a big Raiden-type hat on. And just the silliness of it all. The look at me, you know, and that's because much occult teaching is about indulgence, self-indulgence. But seeing that for what it is, and stopping yourself before you start to separate yourself from your society with your darkness, it's time to stop and move back in. And the same way, when you're so in the light that you become a, quote, light worker, and you think that you've moved beyond the need for human understanding, that you understand things your own way, you've also gone too far in the other direction. And it's all about balance. We know that. Well, I know that. I wouldn't say everyone knows that. But when I say balance, I don't mean light and dark on equal scales. And I think that that's a misinterpretation a lot of people have. It's a misinterpretation I had, that light and dark were weighed on scales in a way. That there's an equal amount of it in us. But the truth is that it took me until I was in my 30s to prescribe an understanding of what it means, what light and dark mean. We prescribe those light and dark attributes. And we may think that that's a universal truth or an archetype, that we can look at some of these things and just know that they're inherently good or bad. But we don't. We don't know. We can't see the bigger picture. We really can't. And every time I try to understand this and explain this, I walk away feeling like I've just shortchanged myself and society by even trying to discuss it. Like, how do I explain my point of view in words? It's that I could give extreme examples off the top of my head, and my apologies if they don't come across right. But let's say someone does something really good and gives a lot of money to a great charity. That might seem like a phenomenal thing to do. But let's say this charity isn't what they're made to be, and they end up spending the money to buy more, say, weapons to oppress another regime or country. We just don't know, but these things happen. What if a person kills another person, and it seems like the most horrific thing, and they kill their father or whatnot, but the person was a completely abusive asshole who went around raping children his entire life, who left nothing but hatred behind, and that's a major issue in our society, is abuse and molestation, and the people get away with it, and it's disgusting. And that is one of the true darknesses of our society, that we can look and know that a child rape is darkness, that is, but when you look at it from what it really is, they say that not all people who are abused as children turn into child abusers, but almost all of people who turn out to be child abusers were abused as a child. And this is one of those consistencies. So we look back and say, this is the evil in our society, child molesters. But then we realize these people were just abused, and their minds have worked in a different way. Doesn't mean they're good, doesn't mean they're doing the right thing, but it means that that people justify things to themselves. And it's up to society to speak out on these things, to make sure that we know that it's not right. And it's not always the abuser's fault, in the sense that in a lot of these cases, husbands who are abusing children have wives that know it, they have family that know it, they have friends that know it, and nobody says a fucking thing. And I'm sorry about the language there, but it's pathetic that people get abused and no one says anything about it. If you're being abused, or you know someone who's being abused, speak up. Tell someone. As he said, tell everyone. Tell everyone. Because there aren't very many real darknesses that we can say this person's dark or that person's dark. But when it's harming another person's life, it's darkness. And that's the closest we can come to knowing darkness, is taking away the rights of another person to live a happy life and stripping away their innocence. Because it's all we have. We are strong creatures, but our consciousness is very, very touchy right now as we develop into whatever we're developing into. I mean, it's my belief the human race is still evolving. We're moving towards something greater. We're going through some growth pangs right now, but in the end, things will work out. And we'll start to understand things on a bigger level. I hope. Because I want to see people happy. Happy knowing that they're going to be sad sometimes. But strong enough to speak out on what they see as wrong, yet intelligent enough to realize that because they see it as wrong doesn't mean that it is wrong, or that they understand the whole picture. So, those are my thoughts for the day. I'd like to do a separate video completely on abuse, because I watched a documentary about a guy who, he's a comedian from New York, who went from, he'd go into these political rants about Reagan back in the 80s. He was like one of the first truthers. And everybody would just sit silently stunned, like nobody was ready for political shit. It was the 80s, everybody wanted to party, Nobody cared about Reagan's Contra deal. But there was some evil going on in the world at that time. Well, this guy ended up revealing that, part of his anger and what moved him in life was that he was raped as a child by his babysitter when he was like 3, several times. And when he finally spoke up about it, people understood, okay, this is why he's so angry towards things. Not that he's really mad, but that he's using that anger to push himself forward. And he ended up being the first guy to get on some of the AOL chat rooms and found out that there was porn being distributed among pedophiles on AOL. This is back in '95, before anybody knew computers. The internet was fresh. And I remember when the internet first came on, you'd dial up on AOL, you'd wait, and you'd wait, and you'd wait. It'd take like 2 days to download a song. Well, they were doing the same thing with porn pictures, and the internet was developed for porn, unfortunately. I wouldn't say it's developed for porn, but the porn market on the internet is so much deeper than anybody could ever fathom, and you don't even want to go there. And we're talking about the most disgusting incestual things, people abusing and raping babies. This shit happens, and it's happening right now in our society, and right under our noses, and they're exchanging pictures with other pedophiles. So this guy, who was the former comedian, he went on and posed as a couple of kids who share their parents' account. He got one guy to say, hey, could you pee on some underwear and send it to me in a Ziploc bag? I mean, these guys are perverts, but they probably had some perverted shit happen to them in their youth. Anyway, point being, he took AOL to court over it, and this ended up being the first big teardown, because AOL was supporting that type of activity by allowing it to happen. I mean, there were chat rooms like Dad Rapes Daughter and Hot Stepdaughters and stuff like that. I mean, and they were just leaving it up. And when they brought him to court, they asked him, even the guy who was, the AOL president or whatever, he said, well, we have a 3 strikes and you're outlaw. And the guy says, what the fuck? You should have a 1 strike and you're out if you're raping children. I'm sorry, Anyway, this went to court. A lot of people got arrested over the child pornography. And this is when a lot of things moved underground, even further into the dark web, when the dark web came around. But the point being that this one guy who was a comedian, who was angry, who had something happen to him, used that as a catalyst for change, to make something great happen, to try to stop other people from doing the same thing. Was it just a drop in the basket? I mean, did it really do any difference? Make any difference? I don't know. But if everybody did, it would. So, that's my rant for the morning. And hope you all have a fantastic day.